sometimes the advice that previous generation gives is well intentioned, but it may not be the right fit.
Yes.
What's the biggest lesson around money you learned?
I mean, one is to talk about it early. It shouldn't be taboo.
What is your earliest memory of money?
I do very, very clearly remember thinking that we were poor.
Moving to India. It's not a decision that models well on a spreadsheet.
No, it does not. In the US, I'm very conscious about money. Versus in India, I just wasn't.
In the US, there is this tendency for finance to be inaccessible to women, like a man's world.
Definitely. It was my dad making the money. It was my dad with the bank accounts. It was my dad making all of the investment decisions.
Your parents ever explain?
We didn't talk about money. I feel like, one, I don't know anything. I feel like I'm behind and I don't know how to think about it. How am I ever going to buy a home?
We have a very special guest today. I have Anusha Raturi with me. She's a friend of mine that I made in DC, and she has quite a unique story because she was born outside. She was born in India?
Yes.
Yeah. Born in India and then lived in Italy before she moved to the US at the age of 3. After which she's bounced around between the US, Indonesia, going back to India for some time and then coming back here. Anusha has done the reverse of what we typically do, where she came here for undergrad and went back to India to do Teach for India. And that has probably shaped a lot of how her relationship with money has been, because those are defining years in your life. I thought it'd be interested to have you on today, Anusha, and kind of hear about your story with your dad living here as an expat, working at the World Bank, and you making the choice to go back to India and then coming back here and seeing how that has shaped your money in your life. So thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
What is your earliest memory of money, Anusha?
So I was thinking about this question. I don't have a specific memory of money per se, but I do very, very clearly remember thinking that we were poor. And what I mean by that is like everything had a budget, and I thought that spending money, anything that I spent that was not critical or crucial, or I think one thing that I definitely remember is having a budget on birthday presents.
Mm-hmm.
And we could never spend more than, I think it was $15 when we were younger. Maybe it moved up to $20, but anything $20 was wow, that's extravagant. So those are the things that I remember of money. Those are my earliest memories of money.
Why do you feel like that was the case in your household? Do your parents ever explain why they set that budget?
We didn't talk about money. So in my mind, whatever it was that we were doing, whatever it was, yeah, that made sense. That was the rule. So I didn't think about what it meant. And so since they said $20 is the budget, and their reaction to anything that was $20 was so extravagant, in my mind, that was extravagant. Wow, $20. Oh my God, I can't believe we spent $20. Or ordering at a restaurant. If we went out for dinner, making sure we ordered, just the entree. We would never get appetizers, because why would we? Yeah, we never talked about why. We never talked about what it was. It was always just a topic of just don't spend a lot of money. And $20 was the most that we could spend.
What do you make of that with the benefit of 20 years of hindsight?
I am super, super conscious of money, and I wish we had talked more about the budgeting and what it meant and why it meant, because honestly, all I heard around money was restrictions and making sure we weren't spending a lot. And so in my mind, that was kind of the root of how I thought about money and how I thought about spending money. Also, in hindsight, I don't think we would have gone poor if we had by mistake bought a $25 gift. I don't think I was conscious of even, I'm trying to explain the feeling. It wasn't I was thinking, oh, we won't be able to pay our bills necessarily, because I don't think I was conscious of where the money was going or how it was used. It just felt like there's this pool of money, mm-hmm. and we can't spend too much of it. And so we have to be careful.
Have you sat down after you started earning and things like that and spoken to your parents about money, or is that?
I don't know if my dad will listen to this podcast or not. Money is a sensitive subject in my house, writing a will and having a sense of what, we haven't talked about that. And my parents are my dad in particular is very resistant to that. I've thought about it a lot for myself, which is where we connected because, and I think one of my prompts was with you, like one of the questions that I had was like, I feel like one, I don't know anything. I feel like I'm behind and I don't know how to think about it. My dad will, although, give me like guidance, right? Like, you should really start investing. This is where you should do, or like, you should buy a house. And like, he's right. but I still like, it took me a long time to understand why and what that meant.
Between your parents, like, have you noticed what the dynamic was like? Did they, take on assigned roles in terms of managing finances, or?
Yeah, they had assigned they had somewhat assigned roles in that my dad was working, and so he was the, financial breadwinner of the family, and my mom was the homemaker, so she was home with the three of us. My dad handled, the accounts and all of that. My mom was obviously handling the budget, managing the budget as she was taking care of the house.
Do you feel like your other siblings also feel the same way about talking about money as a taboo subject?
I think we all have very different ideas and relationships with money. My older sister, she grew up, we moved here when she was 6, and then she stayed here, so she didn't move around, and she went to college and then she got a job. And I think for her, she had the same sort of budget, $20, sense of like, oh my god, if we do more we're going to be poor. But once she started earning, she has talked about how for her it was like she had a paycheck, it was her money, and she felt like she could splurge, so she bought herself, designer jeans, and she would go shopping and all of that.
Mm-hmm.
Versus for me, I was so conscious, I was like, I have to save all my money.
And so you grew up with this mindset, right? So
Yeah.
when you went to high school, as you see other people around you and you tend to compare, do you have a sense of what class you felt like you were in high school? What socioeconomic class you were in high school?
I went to also a different number of schools. So I went to public school, and then in middle school I was at private school in Bethesda, and then for high school I was in an international school. Especially at the private school in Bethesda, I was very, very conscious, and I think also like reinforced this notion that we were poor because the people who were around me all lived in these huge houses. And I remember the first girls' house that I went to in 7th grade when I entered the school had an indoor pool, had an indoor theater, and like, things that I had never even dreamed about. Or if I'd had, it was like, oh yeah, that's how the stars lived. I think my notion of money also changes in America than it versus when I'm outside of the country.
Okay.
Like, I think I'm much more conscious of it here than I was in Indonesia or in India.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I think in middle school, I very, very heavily felt like I was middle class. And then high school was kind of like this weird, like, we're part of this international. And again, like, definitely, I think I remained middle class was my perception, because even there, like, very, very wealthy families with huge houses. And
Well, you say you're not as conscious about money or not feeling like you were middle class when you were in Indonesia.
I think I was less conscious
Hmm.
of money there. I mean, I there was always like a saving mentality of like, I have to
Mm-hmm.
hang on to. So like, my parents would give me money for lunch because
Mm-hmm.
at school we would go, we'd have to buy lunch, and I would often like save that money, like buy a little bit and then keep it, and then like go shopping and, go to get ice cream or something like that, like get myself a treat that way. I'm sure my parents could, if I really wanted to get ice cream, could afford that, even if I hadn't saved up my lunch money. But I would never think to ask. And so it was like, I'm going to save this up.
You don't have any conversation around money. So, but like, do you remember when you got your first bank account?
I got my first bank account in college. I was still very conscious of money. But I think I was always like stressed about money, even though I probably didn't need to be. And that like, I'm very lucky and very fortunate to have parents who were able to like,
Hmm.
support my tuition and things like that.
I mean, that's a big step to take, right? So, do you remember the first purchase that you feel like you made with your own money?
So the first time I got paid anything was in high school. And so with that first salary, I bought something for my parents because that's like tradition, right? Like, obviously they've given, so I'm going to give this back. But I don't remember in college. I think in college it was just like, cool, now I can go buy more drinks. I don't know. Like, I'll go to the bar.
So, if you had to summarize your early money beliefs in one word, what
Hmm.
would you say it was?
I want to say like constrained or restricted.
Hmm. I find that early mentality often informs the rest of the life decisions we make, right? So, do you feel like that pushed you towards getting a degree or a job that would pay well as opposed to,
I'm laughing because should, but I went to nonprofit, which you know.
I
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
sorry. Yeah,
yeah. Now I'm feeling guilty in hindsight, but um, yeah, no, I don't know. I think it was there. Like, yes, the pressure was there, but also it's also tough because even my parents have also changed so much, obviously, like since we were kids. I think a lot of the constraint mindset was probably me putting it on myself rather than imposed on me.
so then talk to me a little bit more about your decision to go to India and teach, right? It's your first job.
Hmm.
You're in a relatively foreign land. You're in a not a lot of financial support either.
It actually wasn't my first job though. My first job was here in DC. I worked with a consulting firm called ICF, and so I did have a salary for about a year.
Okay.
And even that year, I remember. Also, my I think beliefs about money were very confusing because I would grasp
Hmm.
onto, you talk about the rule of thirds of like rent should be a third of your
Hmm.
income
Hmm.
or your monthly takeaway, whatever it is. And so that was very heavily in my mind. But then I got this salary and I was moving into an apartment, and my older sister and my dad were highly like, no, you can afford, this bigger number. I was like, no, I can't. But yeah, and then moving to India, I don't know how to explain it. And I don't know if this is like insightful in the way that you want it to be for this podcast, but something about money in India, like I somehow was able to save more money in India where I took a trip to the Philippines on my, maybe it wasn't my teacher salary, it was the salary right after Teach for India, but I was able to save for it and I felt okay, but it was like my money and I didn't feel guilty about it because I wasn't taking from my parents, but I also wasn't thinking about savings. It was like, I have this and I can do it, and then I'll earn more money next month. So yeah, so somehow in India that mentality really worked, where it was like, and also in India the mentality was very much like month to month, I have enough.
The way I think about it,
Mm-hmm.
moving to India, living in India, and
Mm-hmm.
especially if you feel like you have roots in the US, it's not a decision that models well on a spreadsheet.
No, does not.
So, how did you make that decision?
I was highly conscious of money, but I think part of the reason I was so conscious about it was because I didn't know how to think about it. I think that was probably the stress.
Hmm.
And so my decision to move to India wasn't necessarily a financial decision. I think moving back has made me more conscious of that India decision. Like, I think, again, in our conversation, one of the things that I've mentioned is like, I didn't have an actual, full time salary and 401k and all of that until after business school, which is, what, 7 years after undergrad, which is why I felt so behind. And so, in retrospect, is when I thought about, oh, I went to India and like, oh, and I spent my money and like, yeah, I was great. And I, was able to take trips to see my friends and I was able to travel around India and that's amazing.
Hmm.
But like financially, I didn't think about, I think that was also partly like that, or that is partly what I mean by like, I didn't think of, there's something about the US. In the US, I'm very conscious about money. Versus in India, I just wasn't in the same way. I'll also embarrassingly admit that until well after undergrad, I thought that to buy a house, you needed to have the full amount of money. And so in my head, I was like, how can people buy, like, how am I ever going to buy a home?
Hmm.
I'm never going to have what, 400,000, 500,000, $1 million to just put down on a home, because my idea of purchasing things was you go to the store, you purchase, you have the money, you pay for it. I was pretty clueless. Like, I just didn't think about it.
Yeah, sometimes it's you don't know what you don't know.
Yeah, but I knew that I didn't know something, and we didn't talk about it enough to know just how much I didn't know. Which is something that I really wish. I think that's one thing. Like, I really, really wish that that was a conversation that we had.
What's the biggest lesson around money that you learned, and how do you feel like it has shaped you?
I mean, one is to talk about it early.
Hmm.
That it's not something that it shouldn't be taboo. I think that's something that's really important. figuring out how much you actually need in your checking account for day to day versus how that can be like what it means to have your money work for you.
So, what does this concept of enough money look like? Do you feel like you would,
Like, what does enough money mean for me?
yeah, do you feel like there's a place or a time when you don't feel constrained?
My first thought on that is like when I don't have to think about it, like when I don't have to think about money in order to make a day to day decision. But the other thing that's tricky about money is that your notion of enough changes as you grow and as you maybe have more or less of it.
Yep.
I think like being mindful about that, but enough means being able to provide for myself and being able to provide for those around me without having to necessarily reallocate or rebudget.
For you right now, do you feel like that's tied to a number, or is it just,
I don't, yeah, no, I don't know if I have necessarily a specific number in mind.
because I routinely get people who are like, yeah, I need X million in order to not worry about it. So I was curious to see if you kind of had a number off the top of your head, or
I think my mind is in like 7 different places, right? Like there's a salary number of like, this is how much I need monthly in order to do that. Or there's like a retirement number, which is like, okay, in order to maintain this long term, whatever, or how much do I
Mhm.
need to contribute. Or there's like an expenses number. You know what I mean? Like there's different ways to think about the number maybe in my mind.
What class do you feel like you're in now?
I'd say my parents probably have graduated, given that they don't have to finance 3 daughters and all the things that come along with that, and are retired and are living in India. I hope that they have graduated, but I would say I'm still in the middle class.
So what do you feel like it would take for you to go to the upper class?
That number of enough, or like that notion of enough, right? um, I think I'm also like in a strange, or not a strange, but like a different money space. This year has been, again, like so grateful, but like I don't have a job at the moment. So it's a different mind space around money than perhaps it was last year, and hopefully it will be next year.
My understanding is that's because you're on a sabbatical right now. Do you feel like there is an increased amount of stress around finances since you're on your sabbatical, or did you look at your numbers and say, hey, like I'm good, like I think I can manage for a bit, or
Finances was definitely the biggest barrier to taking the sabbatical
Mhm.
because I didn't talk about, and maybe this is like a me problem of like, I want to feel like I have understood it and I have the framework and I have the tools and I have the spreadsheet and like I know exactly how this decision is going to impact me. And I didn't feel like I had that. And so it was just really scary to say, like, okay, I've done this, but what am I missing? And this is how much I have, and this is what I'm thinking. So that was very scary. So it took a long time for me to, though I should have probably quit my job earlier, to actually do it. But also, I think the sabbatical pushed me to think about, like, I was able to think about investments and where, like, how was I pooling my money? Where was I pooling my money from? But also think about what is the money, what is that number in my checking account actually have to be in order to survive? And how do I need to plan for now versus in the future? Like, I don't know. I think it has helped me to put a lot of those tools and frameworks in practice.
Did you feel like there was a certain amount of assets that you needed to accumulate before you took a sabbatical, aside from the cash cushion?
Um, this is where maybe like the learning by doing is what I need to do. I don't think I thought about it again. Like I don't think I necessarily registered it,
Hmm.
but have now learned through this process why and how they can and have been valuable. And like if I ever want or need to take a sabbatical in the future, how I can think about it. Like I think a lot of the learning that like a lot of the discussions and things that I wish that we had as kids
Hmm.
are things that I'm getting to learn and experience now.
The way I think about it too is, for our generation, sometimes the advice that the previous generation gives is well intentioned, but it may not be the right fit.
Yes, for sure.
Can be a lot of work.
Yeah, and actually now that you're talking about it, I mean, I think we were talking about younger, like out of college and income choices. Like, yes, there's definitely a push when we were younger around like make the right financial decisions, like don't go off and be an artist. But again, my parents have 3 daughters and have changed a lot. And so my older sister did exactly, she checked the right boxes. She went to business school undergrad, she went to business school grad, she's in consumer marketing. Perfect. Amazing. Then there was me who like, yeah, I did econ. I kind of thought about consulting. I went into teaching, but then I went to business school. I'm kind of in this middle space of like, oh yeah, she's kind of listening, but whatever. And then my younger sister is a playwright. I think their financial guidance as well sort of was, it changed over time with these daughters that they ended up with of like business, yes, definitely income, and then this. And so, anyways, so that's really interesting and guided perspective, but also changed perspective over time. But the guidance around house and investment and what it means and all of that, it was the right thing to do. So it felt like a checkbox. And at that time for me, it was like, okay, yes, this makes sense because this is the financial guidance I've been given. I haven't really thought about why. And now cut to this sabbatical, I'm getting to see impacts of why it is beneficial. Would I have made the same decision back then if it hadn't been urged? Absolutely not. Like, there's no way I would have bought a house at that time. But I'm glad that I did.
And do you mind sharing whether your parents helped you out with the house?
They did. They helped with the down payment.
What was that conversation like in your house?
Honestly, it was more me pushing back because I didn't want them to have to help me. So I didn't want to buy a house because I was like, I'm not in a position. Like it just didn't make sense to me. I was like, why are we putting so much money, especially given the constrained mindset of like, we grew up with $20 as a budget, and now you're saying you want to put down 20% on this house that I don't even know if I want to. Like, another word that comes to mind when it comes to money mindset is confused, because going from $20 to you should buy this house because it's a good investment and you just put down X number of money, and it's fine. It makes sense. And like, yeah, it'll all come out of your inheritance in the end. So this, like, it was just, it's all of these things of it, like, none of those dots really connected for me. So I was very confused. We also never talked about investment. So I didn't know what that meant. He was like, it's a good investment. And I was like, what do you mean? It's a lot of money and I'm not going to live here forever. So I didn't know what that meant either. A lot of this comes down to ignorance, I guess, but I didn't understand. I didn't understand the implications of
Do you feel like you've gained clarity on what is an investment now?
it. Yes. Yes, I hope so. I'm sure there are still things that I don't know. I don't know what I don't know. Um, but yes, I do feel like it has helped. And again, that's why this year, the learning by doing also has shed another light on how to think about
Hmm.
money, where it feels a little less scary.
Did it ever cross your mind to work with a financial planner?
Well, I think you know this answer. Yes, I did. Actually, what held me back earlier was I don't think I have enough money to talk to a financial planner.
Hmm.
I don't have enough assets to really manage, so I'll figure it out. And why would I need a financial planner?
Hmm.
Speaking to you last year, and that was in the context of, okay, I'm thinking about making this decision. This time I do want a framework for it. I do want to make sure that I'm thinking about it in the right way. And I do feel like there are knowledge gaps. And so a financial planner is trained in this and can help me think about that.
I hear this thing a lot. I don't know how true it is, but in the US, there is this tendency for investing and finance to be made very inaccessible to women, or it's made to seem like a man's world.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know if you perceive it the same way.
Yeah, I would say yes, that's accurate. That feels accurate for me. It's not everyone's experience, but I would say, I mean, yeah, historically, finances, investment, all of them, like, it just feels very male, white male heavy, right? It's targeting that demographic. So yes, definitely. And then in my house, that's what I saw. Not that my mom wasn't managing finances because she had to, but like externally, is my dad making the money? Is my dad with the bank accounts? Is my dad like making all of the investment decisions? So that's what I saw at home. But what has been really cool that I really enjoy is that there's a lot of now female directed um, startups, services, things like that, like Elvest, and
Mhm.
which I think one speaks to the fact that yeah, that was a gap that was missing, but two is a gap that needs to be filled and is being filled, and so that's exciting.
We joke in the financial planning industry that the industry itself is pale, male, and stale.
Sounds right. I really liked it. Yeah, your words, not mine.
it's what we use. It's literally what we use in the industry to describe the industry. So yeah, there's something you shared in terms of frameworks, right? So you said learning by doing and trying to establish frameworks for yourself. Are there any questions that I can help answer or help you create a framework for?
But I'm curious, what are the considerations that you would keep in mind when you are making a decision to take a sabbatical? And then more importantly, figuring out what you need in order to rebalance your finances coming out of that sabbatical.
I'm actually going to plug another financial planner in here. Her name is Katie North, and she's actually written a book called The Art of the Sabbatical.
Oh,
And so she herself is somebody who built a firm, went through burnout and is now like took a sabbatical and is now working on educating people on what is the best way to take a sabbatical.
hmm.
The way I would start thinking about it is a sabbatical will not model well on the spreadsheet. So this is something that I said, like it's not something you're doing in order to improve the dollar amount that you will get in the ending balance in your life,
No.
but it's something that will greatly enhance the balance of life experiences that you will back.
Mm-hmm.
And so having that realization, I think, is paramount to most people. And then I think, as long as you have sufficient money, you have a good visa status, and you have uh, the ability or the willingness to rough it out by jumping back into the job market.
Well, how would you think about now the other end of, yes, you've taken the sabbatical. How would you think about, or what would you think about as you're making a decision to go back? What are critical elements to think about?
I would say the pay in relation to how sustainable it is a big thing that I
Mm,
would think is important. And then also, how do you feel like your expenses will be if you go back, right? So when you're on a sabbatical, you're obviously very conscious of how each dollar gets spent.
hmm.
But when you start making more money, sometimes it's like, okay, well, I'm gonna eat out some more, or I'm gonna go fancier, or I'm gonna like lease a new car, or I'm gonna take 3 international vacations a year. And so you need, I think, gaining a little more clarity on what is important to you. And hopefully the sabbatical has kind of helped
Yeah, that's fair.
in saying that, hey, like even if I go back to work, like is there a certain amount of money or spending, or is there a certain pattern in which I allocate my dollars that tells me how much I actually need, as opposed to thinking, oh, like I'm going to need this like dollar number that I have to spend each month, and so I can't settle for a job below that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And so the things that are not in your control, right? Like how long it takes for you to get a job and what they will actually pay and things like that. So, but when the offer does come knocking at your door, I think it's the ability to be very clear on why you're taking that job.
Yeah.
And it's okay if you take it just for the salary, but like,
Yeah, that completely makes sense, right? Like it's one, why did you take the sabbatical in the first place? And then how do you apply that learning to this next one? And I think that element of sustainability is an important one to think about as you're making those next decisions.
I think I had one more question for you. Imagine 10 years from now, we look back at your credit card statements. What do you hope they would say about you?
Oh, my credit card statements.
Now that you've been through the exercise of a sabbatical, and hopefully that's given you clarity on what is important and what is less important to you.
I think that answer will obviously change based on like what stage you're at and what your financial status is in life of like I have a salary might change that as well. But I hope that my spending says about me I have been able to, I mean, one, like provide for myself, but more importantly, like provide for those around me who I'm able to provide for. And that I've been able to, I don't know, enjoy experiences that perhaps when I was younger felt very scary or inaccessible. Like I've been able to treat myself and figure out a way to do that. Words keep coming to mind of like that one question of like, it was scary. Like money is scary, right? It's inaccessible, it's confusing, it's scary. And so I'm hopeful that in the future I'm able to, like my spending statement says about me that I am more I'm less scared, more knowledgeable, and I've been able to spend on expenses, but I'm also able to provide for those around me and also able to provide for myself in a way that is not excessive, but is, I don't know, comfortable, right? Like, is sustainable, to, like, in your words. So maybe that's a cheating answer, but I think that is what I hope to be able to achieve and hope that my spending statement says about me.
And it may just look like saying, hey, we're going to order appetizers with every meal.
Oh my God. That still gives me, like, when I look at them and when we're out, I'm like, oh my God, appetizers? Like, that feels indulgent, you know?
Well, thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your journey.
Thanks for having me. I hope it was what you were looking
Thank you.
for.
Yeah, I mean, you have a very unique story to tell, and I'm sure sharing this with a lot of other people will hopefully encourage them to share their stories, but more importantly, think about how much of this is applicable to themselves as well.
I hope, and I also hope, I mean, money is still scary to me. Like, I still, it's like, oh my God, money. We're talking about money. But I also hope that I'm able to talk about it more knowledgeably, and I'm able to, I hope that money conversations become more open and less scary. Um, I'm also hopeful, this is less about my bank account, but I'm hopeful that my parents are able to talk about money in a more open way,
And this
because
is your sign to schedule some time with your parents to sit down and talk about finances.
I have tried, but maybe this podcast will also be inspiration for them to.
We'd love to have your dad on at some point if he's open to it.
Yeah.
Raturi uncle, if you're hearing this, make sure to come join us.
Yeah. I mean, and obviously their mentality of money, about money,
Yeah.
shaped ours as well. Of, like, they came from this certain context and that's how they have lived. And so, yeah, the uncle, get on here.